My name is David Madison, the 9th of January 2021. I was a Methodist minister for 9 years, but by the time I finished my PhD in biblical studies, my belief in God had evaporated. That wasn't supposed to happen. Seminaries exist to manufacture clergy, but if you study the Bible too carefully, too closely, its errors and flaws become all too obvious. In this series of videos, Bible Blunders and Bad Theology, I will discuss a lot of them. This is episode 23. The Bible is supposedly the best book on morality of all time. Whatever guidance you need on whatever topic is right there. But when we check out what the Bible has to say about marriage, well, there are far too many blunders. We discount Old Testament ideas about marriage. For example, a woman found not to be a virgin on her wedding night was to be stoned to death. It was very, very common for leaders in Israel to have concubines as well as wives. There was polygamy, which was probably an inspiration for the Mormons. If a man died, his brother should take her as wife. A man could have multiple virgins taken as prisoners. It would seem obvious that the patriarchy was in charge of making these rules. Christians may be tempted to wave off all this because it's in the Old Testament. But how awkward then is the Jesus script found in the Sermon on the Mount that not one jot, not one tiny fragment of Old Testament law can be dropped. Nonetheless, whatever old Abraham and Solomon did seems to be too remote to matter that much on how marriage today is defined and practiced. But, and this is awkward too, the New Testament fails to offer much good advice on marriage. The Apostle Paul was one of the primary theologians of the early church, and he really didn't have much use for marriage at all. We can be confident that most Christians ministers who offer premarital counseling just ignore Paul's advice, even though it's there in the Holy Bible. And how ironic, homophobic Christians approve of Paul's condemnation of gay relations, but would simply laugh off his advice on straight relationships. For example, he wrote this to the Galatians, quote, "And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires," unquote. Devout Christians enjoy the passions of the flesh as much as anyone else. More classic examples of Paul's bad advice are found in the 7th chapter of 1 Corinthians. Quote, "To the unmarried and the widows I say it is well for them to remain unmarried as I am. But if they are not practicing self-control, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to be aflame with passion." What? So marriage helps you not to be aflame with passion? Paul was clueless. He also said, quote, "I want you to be free from anxieties. The unmarried man is anxious about the affairs of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about the affairs of the world, how to please his wife," unquote. And he begins his advice on marriage with this gem: "It is well for a man not to touch a woman." And what about this big blunder of Jesus? He suggested that God joins together all the people who make bad marriages. His incredibly bad teaching, forbidding divorce, has caused so much damage and suffering. Yes, it's a huge blunder, and it's bad theology. So it's probably a good idea just to set aside the Bible if you're looking for sound moral teaching about marriage.